So I want to talk a little bit about authority claims in the embodiment space. So this has become a bit of a pet peeve of mine. For me, embodiment is about empowering people. It's teaching them something, helping people learn something, facilitating people so they can learn something in their own body that they can use for themselves. And by its nature, by definition, embodied work, somatic work is experiential. So it's all about the person's own experience. Sort of one end of things you can go is to go super sort of subjective and just say, well, it's all about feeling, it's all about intuition. People talk all sorts of bollocks in this world and it never gets tested. I haven't really grown up in that world. I've grown up in the world of, say, martial arts, where you get to sort of see what works after a while. And Paul Linden, particularly one of my teachers, likes to test things. He'll test your posture and say, raise your eyebrows or hold your breath, and then we'll look at your posture. There's a certain school of Aikido, they do these key tests that are all about that as well. I wouldn't necessarily agree with all their models, but this idea of testing things, I think, is very, very healthy in this work. The main thing, though, is just giving people something they can actually use in their life. What started happening, though, is I think mostly coming from a kind of insecurity. A lot of embodiment teachers have started to claim authority from elsewhere, other than the actual experience speaking for itself. Now, there's a long tradition of this in sort of fundamentalism. The basic sort of fundamentalist religious claim that seeps into embodiment is the book says, yeah, the tradition says, or the guru says. So it will be like, well, this is how the great guru blah blah does it, and I'll be like, why? Why do they do it that way? How does that help? What's the benefit of that? What's the disadvantage? So be careful of those authority claims of it's just a tradition. And people may even, they often use claims to history as part of trying to claim authority. So it'll be like, yoga is 5,000 years old. Okay, first of all, no, it's not. Postural yoga isn't. Tai Chi isn't as old as people think, etc., etc. They're often just making inaccurate historical claims. But even if it were, so what? I mean, drilling holes in people's heads and genital mutilation and all sorts of things can be ancient and not wise or smart, particularly in a modern context, right? So something being old isn't necessarily a thing that it's good. Some countries like the new things, on the other hand, they'll say this is brand new, right up to date, and it's like, well, neither of those really are a valid authority claim. They're interesting, and I'm interested if this is a Native American practice that may genuinely go back thousands of years. I'm interested in that. That tells me something. There's some longevity to it. But, for example, circumcision, that's something I profoundly disagree with as an embodiment person with a trauma background and trauma aware. That's a pretty old tradition in a number of cultures, but it's child abuse and it traumatizes babies, so fuck that. Okay, so old traditions, not always a good thing. Another thing people will say is the great guru said, and I'm like, well, okay, but think for yourself, right? Like, we're not in a religion here. And the opposite side of that is sort of scientism, or the blobology, which is, a brain scan with a blob of color on it. And it's like, science says, bitches, like this idea that just whatever science says is always true. And the thing with science is you can pick things from different places. Often scientists don't really understand embodiment. I think very few do. It's not that work isn't interesting, but there's something sort of, it's not good science because it's justifying it after the fact, like, for me, it's like there are studies which show that meditation isn't particularly useful, for example. None of my friends are going to share those studies on their Facebook wall, though, are they? None of my friends are going to name those studies when they're introducing mindfulness in a business context. So it's not really science. They're not looking at it in a fair, objective way. The evidence base on meditation, just giving this an example, is way less than people think. And that's not that I'm criticizing meditation. I meditate myself, but I'd rather come from speaking from my own experience rather than trying to justify it. The other thing I've seen with that is if you don't really know the science inside out, you could easily have egg on your face. You could easily have a business person in your training who's actually got a degree in cognitive neuroscience before they went into business, and they'll make you look like an idiot. And then you're just like, well, I was just trying to justify what I already thought was true. So I'd say it's a bad way to go. Not super smart, not good science, and again, degrading to the basic idea, which is we're referring to our own experience and we're empowering others to investigate their own experience, which is the field by definition. So the other one you'll see is lineage claims. So it'll be like, I trained with such and such. Life coaches like this. I mean, Aikido people do this as well. It'll be like, someone good, and they'll say they want to be associated with their name, but they may have only trained with them briefly. I mean, unless they're really like a lineage holder, I try, it's like not working on your father's name as well. There's something about making your own credibility. Actually, in Germany, they have this tradition where if you're a journeyman and you have to travel far from home and you're not telling people who your teachers are, and they won't recognize that you're the son of such and such, and you actually have to prove yourself as a craft person yourself. It's a journeyman tradition in Germany to this day, actually, but it's a medieval tradition, I believe. So yeah, so that's another one to be a little bit careful of, is when people say such and such has trained me, or people love their certificates, I've noticed, in certain countries like in Ukraine and Russia, and it's like, does that make you good that you've got the certificate? I mean, I'd like to think the EFC certificate means something, in that there are genuine standards for that, and we fail people, and there's not a given that you'll pass, but most people just buy their certificates and essentially just have to turn up. And there's pressure on me sometimes to pass people. I'm like, I won't do it. And I genuinely see that there's not always good standards kept with certification. People can slip through, and there's great people who miss a bit of coursework so they don't get certified. So equally, that's another one. So yeah, they're the main authority claims I would watch out for. There's others. I've been doing this 40 years, and it's like, well, yeah, but you're only learning the first 5 years, so does that count? I know Aikido teachers who stopped learning after 10 years, and the last 20 years they've just been treading water. So age used as one. There's so many, and I say just watch out for them. Watch out for them. For me, in any field, these things are dangerous. The fundamentalism or the scientism, or they're referring to teachers. But in embodiment, they're particularly ironic, because this whole field is defined through our own experience, and I would say through empowering people, rather than telling, listen to me because I've got this qualification, this teacher, or the ancient people of Papua New wherever say so.